well, we were talking about inflation and fiscal policy, which led me to, inquire about the future of Build Back Better. Right now it's sort of stalled, and I was wondering what the future lies for Build Back Better and what you think Democrats ought to do.
Well, I am supportive of Build Back Better. I don't have a prediction for you about whether or not it will pass, but I'm supportive. But let me tell you, though, how I think about it. And I think there's arguments on both sides, but a framework for thinking about it. The first consideration is inflation. I think that's a negligible consideration. Build Back Better is spread out over time. It's mostly paid for. Parts of it increase the productive side of the economy. And that's why when nonpartisan groups like the Penn-Wharton budget model have looked at it, they found essentially a negligible impact on inflation over the medium term. So the inflation discussion we've been having, not relevant for Build Back Better. There's a second set of considerations around fiscal sustainability. I am less worried about that, I think, than the Concord coalition is, but I think that's something where honest people disagree and isn't certain, and one could ask about fiscal sustainability, and if you want to, we can drill deeper into that. What I'm mostly focused on is, does it advance priorities? Does it help address climate change? Does it result in better education for children so they can grow up and participate more productively in our society? Not every piece of it is perfect, but on balance, I think it does a pretty good job of addressing climate change, child poverty, and our economic future. It does need to be better focused, though. As an economic matter, having programs that are permanent rather than temporary is much better. And maybe they should add some deficit reduction into the bill as part of the prioritization, maybe for economic reasons, if not for political ones.
Here's the thing that we've been concerned about on the fiscal side of it. And I think there are a lot of things in the Build Back Better Act that need to be addressed in terms of long-term economic growth. I think we would probably agree on that. We certainly think that the growth of the labor force, trying to bring more people into the labor force, and better worker training and productivity, whether that's investment or worker training, needs to be done. The problem has been with the pay-fors and the timing, the timing gimmicks of starting new programs and then having them expire and using permanent tax cuts to make it look like it's paid for. And even that might not be such a problem if we didn't already have, perpetually growing budget deficits going into the situation. So I do think on the fiscal side, it's important to be able, maybe not focus on deficit reduction, but to be able to have a program that's going to be at least sustainable on its own over the longer term.
Yeah, so a lot of what can Build Back Better expires very quickly. There are child tax credits that only last 1 year. There's funding to encourage states to set up preschool programs, but then they're only funded for, I think, 3 years. And most everything is like that. I think that's problematic because one of two things will happen. One possibility is that those programs get extended, they're not paid for, and there's a big increase in the deficit. That's probably what you're most worried about. That's what Senator Manchin is most worried about. And I think that's a legitimate thing to worry about. I'm even more worried that none of these programs are going to be so popular, and Republicans will be control at least one chamber of Congress, and so that you won't be able to extend them. And so you'll have all this effort, and then you'll only get 1 year of investment in children through the tax credit. A lot of states will end up not setting up preschool programs because they won't believe that the funding will be continued by Congress. And so I think making these programs temporary both threatens higher deficits and it threatens the programs being unsuccessful on their own terms. So whether you're obsessed with deficits or could care less about deficits, I think either way, you would rather have fewer programs and make sure those programs are designed well and are permanent.
That reminds me of Supreme Court opinions where you have different justices saying, we all agree on the result, but for very different reasons.